Welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you're getting comfortable.
Grab a warm drink.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe dim the lights a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because today we are settling in for something that feels very much like a late night chat by a fire.
Oh, totally. It has that vibe.
It really does. You know those conversations you have that start out completely normal? Like you're just talking about home renovation or, picking out paint swatches or arguing over bathroom tile.
And then
Suddenly you're talking about deep, profound psychological trauma, almost without noticing it, and just veers right into the spooky stuff.
It's the best kind of conversation. And we are looking at a session today that manages to completely bridge that gap, the gap between the incredibly mundane, like literally painting a bathroom cupboard, and the profoundly spiritual.
It's basically a masterclass in how our physical world is just a mirror for what is happening inside our heads.
How a can of paint can actually be a weapon against your deepest fears.
Yes, exactly. But before we strike the match and light this fire, we have to get the housekeeping out of the way.
Right, the disclaimer.
So everyone knows, and this is important, this podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are here to learn, to explore, and to get a little bit deeper into the mystery.
Always.
So let's set the stage for this deep dive.
We are diving into session 353 of the Seth Material. This specifically comes from the early sessions, book 8.
And the date of record.
July 17th, 1967. It's a Monday night, 9 p.m.
1967. I mean, the summer of love is happening. But in Elmira, New York, Jane Roberts and her husband, Rob,
who Seth refers to as Ruburt and Joseph.
Right, Ruburt and Joseph. They are dealing with something a lot more domestic than the counterculture revolution.
They're painting their apartment.
Which is funny because usually when I paint my bathroom, the biggest existential crisis I have is whether I should use eggshell white or creamy white.
Right. It's just a weekend chore.
But for Jane, this is an actual spiritual battleground.
It is. And we do need to credit the source here. This material comes to us from the New Awareness Network. It's incredibly dense, fascinating material.
If you haven't read the books directly, you are really missing out on the full texture of these sessions. We're pulling out the gems today, but the full treasure chest is in those books.
For sure. So let's look at what's actually happening on this Monday in 1967. Jane has been having a surprisingly good day.
Yeah, she was just walking downtown, right, doing errands.
Doing errands. And she actually started hearing Seth's voice right there on the street. She was receiving messages while walking around.
Which is a huge deal.
Massive. Usually at this point in their work, she has to be in a very controlled trance state. Living room, lights dimmed, sitting very still.
So being open like that, while just out and about, implies the channel is widening. The barrier between her normal self and this other consciousness is getting thinner.
Exactly. But then she comes home, starts painting the bathroom, and boom.
Physical symptoms flare up. She starts feeling sick, nauseous.
And Seth, the entity she channels, has a really interesting take on why she's suddenly feeling sick while painting.
He doesn't say it's the paint fumes.
No. He doesn't say she's just tired from walking downtown.
What does he say?
He says the symptoms are, quote, keyed off by particular objects.
Keyed off by particular objects. That is such a chilling concept to me.
It really makes you look around your house differently.
It does.
Yeah.
The idea that your furniture, your walls, the literal cupboards in your bathroom are not neutral. They're like batteries holding a charge.
Seth actually calls them ghost images.
Ghost images. That sounds like a horror movie title. The ghost images of Elmira.
It kind of does. But in this context, he means inner disturbances. Jane has basically projected her fears, her anxieties, her past traumas onto the physical structure of her apartment.
Because she's lived there for a while.
Right. So every time she looked at that unpainted cupboard over the years, she might have been feeling anxious or small.
So over time, the cupboard essentially becomes the anxiety.
Exactly. When she looks at it, she isn't just seeing wood anymore. She's seeing a ghost image of her own internal struggle.
So by painting over it,
she is literally and symbolically conquering those ghosts. Seth says the last significant ghost images are being met head-on.
it's basically an exorcism by home improvement.
Yes, exorcism by home improvement.
I feel like that should be a show on HGTV. Like, today we're going to retile your shower and banish the demons of your childhood.
I would watch that. But in a way, that is exactly what Seth says is happening. He says because the work is very physical, it reinforces the psychological victory in the physical universe.
You can't just think about changing.
Right. You have to physically do something to anchor that change. The effort, the scrubbing, the actual brush strokes, it tells the subconscious, we are doing this. We are changing our reality.
Okay, speaking of anchoring changes and getting rid of bad vibes, we really have to talk about the fox.
The fox. Yes, this is a classic moment in the material.
It is hands down my favorite part of this session. It's so weird, so specific, and honestly kind of hilarious.
Seth brings up this analogy of a fox getting rid of fleas. It's actually based on an old piece of folklore that Jane had read about somewhere.
Right. The story goes that a fox, when it is just plagued by fleas, will find a way to trick them.
It doesn't just sit there and scratch. It uses physics.
It's genius. So the fox picks up a ball of wool or maybe some moss in its mouth, and it walks very, very slowly into a body of water.
It backs in, or it walks in slowly. And as the fox submerges, the fleas panic. They don't want to drown. They absolutely hate water.
So they migrate up the fox's body to stay dry.
Right. They move from the legs to the back to the neck.
They're climbing the ladder of the fox to stay safe.
Exactly. And eventually, the fox is completely underwater except for the tip of its nose and this ball of wool in its mouth.
So all the fleas, maybe thousands of them, rush onto the wool.
Because it's the only dry land left.
And then the fox just opens his mouth.
Releases the wool, the current takes it away along with all the fleas, and the fox walks out clean.
It's such a vivid, bizarre image. But Seth isn't just dropping nature trivia here. He's applying this directly to Jane's bathroom renovation.
He is. He says, and this is a quote, "In this case, your full cupboard of dirty clothes has somewhat served."
The dirty laundry. He's literally comparing a pile of dirty laundry to the ball of wool.
Precisely. While Jane was going through this intense psychic work of repainting and facing her ghosts, that negative energy, the fleas needed somewhere to go.
Because you can't just destroy energy.
Right, you displace it. So they migrated into the dirty clothes in the bathroom cupboard.
That is hilarious. Sorry, honey, I can't do the laundry today. It's full of psychic fleas.
It sounds funny, I know. But think about the underlying logic. The clothes acted as a sponge. They absorbed the residue of the trauma she was releasing.
If those clothes hadn't been there, maybe that energy would have stuck to her. Or moved on to Rob.
And Seth gives very practical advice on this, too. He doesn't say, burn the clothes.
But he almost does.
He says to wait until the ceiling is done. Finish the painting job. Then take the clothes and wash them. But here's the kicker. He says, preferably, this time at a different laundromat.
A different laundromat. You cannot make this up. Why? Because you don't want to release those fleas back into your usual territory.
Exactly. Distance matters. Context matters. Taking them to a completely new location completes the ritual of removal.
If you wash them at your usual place, you're staying in the same cycle.
You're rubbing elbows with the same energy. Yeah. Going somewhere new physically signifies to the subconscious that the fleas are gone for good. It breaks the pattern.
It really reinforces that idea that magic or psychology, whatever you want to call it, is all about intent and ritual. The laundry isn't just hygiene, it's a purification ceremony.
And that leads us perfectly to the concept of the temple. Because if the laundry is the purification, the apartment itself is the sacred space that needs to be redefined.
Right. Seth drops this absolute bombshell on Jane. He tells her that she's always viewed their apartment as a temple. But not just any temple. A temple dedicated to Rob.
Dedicated to her husband, Joseph.
Imagine living in your own house, but feeling like you can't change the furniture because it's a shrine to your partner. That sounds exhausting.
It's a really profound insight into their relationship dynamic. Seth explains that Jane suppressed her own spontaneous portion of her personality because she wanted to maintain the atmosphere she thought Rob wanted.
She was walking on eggshells, terrified that if she introduced a contrasting color, it would desecrate the temple.
She thought she had to be the curator of his museum.
And the irony is, Rob probably didn't even care.
Most likely not. It was all her own projection.
And the act of rebellion, the thing that brings down the temple walls.
Blue paint.
Blue paint. She paints the cupboards blue, a contrasting color that doesn't match the shrine.
And Seth analyzes this like he's Freud looking at a dream. He says this is a most healthy acceptance of her own spontaneity.
It represents her realizing that she can trust her own judgment. She doesn't have to be a carbon copy of Rob.
She can introduce her own element, the blue paint, and the world won't end. The temple won't collapse.
But Seth phrases this in a way that actually had me laughing out loud. He's talking about how Jane used to feel about Rob's opinion.
Oh, the overbearing God line.
Yes. Quote, "He is still highly cautious at invoking your displeasure, but he is not terrified, as at the wrath of some overbearing god."
It's so dramatic.
It really is. Imagine looking at your husband, who by all accounts is this nice, mild-mannered artist, and subconsciously viewing him as an overbearing god who will smite you if you paint the cupboards blue.
Seth is using that hyperbole to show just how deep the trauma went. It wasn't really about Rob. It was about Jane's internal landscape.
She projected this massive authority figure onto him.
Because she needed someone to be the god so she could play the role of the frightened child.
And the session notes actually mentioned that Jane laughed at this. Her eyes got wide and very dark with amusement.
That laughter is crucial. It means she sees the absurdity of it now. When you can laugh at your fear, the fear loses its power entirely.
She realizes, oh, I've been treating my husband like Zeus, and it's ridiculous.
Exactly.
So we have the blue paint of rebellion, we have the laundry full of psychic fleas. It all feels very liberating.
It does.
But, and here's where we need to shift gears a bit, the session takes a turn. It moves from these domestic victories in the living room and bathroom to the root cause of why Jane needed these victories in the first place.
And that root is chilling.
Yeah. We really need to talk about the nights.
Jane had a very specific sleep pattern. She would wake up every 3 hours, almost like clockwork.
I think a lot of people listening can relate to that. Insomnia, waking up at 3 a.m., it's the witching hour. Everything always feels worse at 3 a.m.
The worries are definitely louder. But for Jane, it wasn't just typical insomnia or daily worry. It was a deep survival mechanism born in her childhood.
Seth dives into her history with her mother to explain this, and this is really heavy stuff. Her mother was severely crippled, right? Rheumatoid arthritis.
Yes, mostly bedridden, unable to move easily. Seth reveals that as a child, Jane was terrified that her mother would die during the night.
Because the mother couldn't climb the stairs.
Right. If the mother needed help, she couldn't get to Jane. But it morphed into something much darker as she grew. Jane feared that the mother would commit suicide. Or kill them both while he slept.
Kill them both while he slept. That is literally the stuff of nightmares.
Literally. Seth says, he thought as a child that every night was literally a death and every dawn literally a rebirth.
Pause on that for a second. Every night is literally a death. That means going to sleep isn't resting. It's dying.
And you have to fight to come back to life in the morning.
Imagine the cortisol levels of a kid dealing with that. Imagine the constant stress of a child living with that belief system.
You cannot sleep for 8 solid hours if you subconsciously think sleep is death. You have to wake up to check if you're still alive, to check if your mother is still alive.
And Seth says this created a pattern of intense identification. Jane started to see herself as crippled, just like the mother.
A stone about your neck, Seth calls it. Jane feared that if she died, Rob would feel released, just as Jane felt she would have been released if her mother had died.
It's this massive tangle of guilt, relief, fear, and projection.
It is. But, and this is the classic Seth flip, he doesn't tell her to go take sleeping pills. He doesn't say, you need to fix this bad habit immediately.
No. He reframes it completely.
This is what makes this material so brilliant. Seth looks at the symptom and he sees a strategy. He says the writing at night, because Jane would wake up and write poetry or work on her books, is actually a triumph.
A triumph.
Yes. By staying awake or by waking up and creating something tangible, Jane is proving that the feared death was powerless against him.
Oh, wow. So the insomnia isn't a failure to sleep. It's a victory over death.
Exactly. She lives through the night. She creates in the face of the void. Seth says this 3-hour biological pattern isn't necessarily detrimental anymore. It can be used. It's a tool now.
That is such a powerful way to look at our quirks or our so-called disorders. Maybe they aren't just broken parts of us. Maybe they are the armor we built to survive something we've forgotten about.
And now that she is painting the cupboards, now that she is confronting those ghost images, the need for that heavy armor is falling away.
But Seth says, hey, if you want to keep writing at night, do it. Use the quiet. Don't feel guilty about the pattern.
Thinking of poetry toward dawn, that's how he puts it.
That's a beautiful image. It's a lot better than staring at the ceiling terrified of the dark.
It transforms the night from a tune into a studio.
So we've tackled the ghosts in the bathroom and the deep childhood ghosts in the bedroom. But Seth knows that you can't just do this kind of heavy psychic work in a vacuum. You need interruptions.
You need pattern breakers. And in this session, the pattern breakers arrive in the form of house guests.
Right. Peter Murtu from Chula Vista, California, and Pat Norelli from Boston.
Visitors from the outside world.
Now, normally when I'm going through a massive internal crisis and simultaneously repainting my house, the very last thing I want is house guests.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
just want to hide in my fortress. I want to be a gremlin in my cave until it's over.
That is the natural instinct. But Seth says these visits are crucial because they represent a breakup of pattern.
Meaning what exactly?
If Jane and Rob just stayed in their apartment, focused entirely on their own psychic navels, they might easily slide back into old, comfortable habits. The guests force them to engage. They force energy to move outward instead of just swirling inward.
And Seth makes a point of noting that they didn't say no to these guests.
Yes. He says, "You did not say no to Ruburt," meaning Rob didn't shut down Jane's desire to see people. It shows they actually have enough energy to use elsewhere.
It's a sign of health. If you have enough energetic reserve to host a dinner party, you aren't drowning in your trauma.
And specifically regarding Peter Murtaugh, Seth makes a prediction. He says Jane and Rob are going to help him at a very important time in his life, that their meeting will change the direction of his life.
I love that ripple effect. You heal yourself, you paint your cupboards, you face your childhood ghosts, and suddenly you are equipped to help someone else change their life. It's not just about you anymore.
It completely connects back to the temple idea. A temple isn't just a place for the priest to hide, it's a place for pilgrims. By clearing out the negative energy, they are making space for others to come in and be healed or inspired.
Speaking of healing, we have to touch on the vitamins.
Ah, yes. The vitamins.
Seth suggests Jane take vitamins.
Which just seems so mundane. I mean, this is a disembodied entity talking about the profound nature of reality. And he's basically saying, take your one a day.
But listen to the reasoning he gives. It's not about the chemical composition of the vitamin.
It never is with Seth.
He says, for several months, they will be of help on the physical level, showing his intent, you see, carried out in physical terms.
Intent.
Before this point, Seth says Jane's system wouldn't have utilized them at all. If you subconsciously don't want to get better, the medicine won't work.
But no.
Now, taking the vitamin is a physical ritual, just like painting the cupboard. It signals to the body, I am ready to be healthy. It's the placebo effect, but completely optimized. It's not that the vitamin is magic. It's that the physical act of swallowing it is a direct message to the subconscious.
Precisely. It aligns the physical action with the psychic desire.
Okay, so we've got the physical health addressed, the psychic health. Now, what about the career? Because Seth drops a hammer here regarding Jane's job.
The Mr. Miller job.
Seth is not subtle here at all. He says, give notice to Mr. Miller by August 1st.
At the latest.
Why the urgency? Why does he want her to quit so abruptly?
He calls it a nursery school position with unpleasant associations.
Ouch. Nursery school position. That sounds a bit condescending, but I think he means it's a role she has fundamentally outgrown.
Exactly. It's a job that keeps her small. It keeps her in a role that simply doesn't fit the person she is becoming. And Seth warns there's too much at stake to backtrack now.
But quitting a steady job is scary, especially in 1967. How are they supposed to make money?
The ESP classes.
This is the major pivot. Seth is telling them to bet entirely on themselves.
He says to throw his energy into the classes and be patient, as he would if he had an outside job.
That is fantastic advice for any entrepreneur or creative today. Treat your passion project with the exact same discipline you treated your 9-to-5. Don't just dabble. Show up.
And he predicts that the financial success of these classes will bridge the psychic and physical dimensions for them. It's not just about paying the rent, it's about validating the work they're doing.
If the ESP classes can physically support them, it proves that this weird stuff actually has concrete value in the real world.
It validates the reality of it. It's not just a weekend hobby anymore, it's their life.
And it starts a new phase of their relationship. When you are partners in a mission like that, the dynamic fundamentally changes. You aren't just husband and wife trapped in a temple of fear. You are colleagues in a temple of discovery.
I love that framing. And before they close the session, there's one more mysterious breadcrumb dropped. The Wisconsin deal.
Yes. This is one of those highly specific predictions Seth was known for. Jane had apparently been hearing some rumblings about a publishing venture in Wisconsin.
And Seth confirms it. He describes a specific man, light brown hair, medium height.
Connection with teaching, but not in public school.
Connected to psychic work.
And the absolute kicker, he has read or will read the ESP book.
It's a brilliant reminder that there are threads being woven all the time that they can't see yet. While Jane is scrubbing the cupboards in Elmira, someone in Wisconsin is reading her book, or about to, and a connection is actively forming.
It reinforces that core idea of trust. You do the work in front of you, the painting, the writing at night, the quitting of the dead-end job, and the universe, or framework two, as Seth might call it, is arranging the meetings you need.
You just have to be open enough to receive the message when you're walking downtown.
Which brings us completely full circle.
It does.
So let's unpack this whole session. What does it all really mean for us, the listener?
I think the core message here is that there is absolutely no separation between the magical and the mundane.
Right. We tend to think spiritual work happens on a meditation cushion, and house chores are just drudgery. But Seth is showing us that painting a cupboard is a profound spiritual act if the intent is there.
It's about externalizing the internal. Jane took her fear, her ghost images, and she literally covered them in blue paint. She took her trauma, put it in a pile of dirty laundry, and washed it away at a different laundromat.
She took her childhood fear of death and turned it into poetry toward dawn.
And she took her doubt and replaced it with daily vitamins and a resignation letter.
It's incredibly empowering. It means you don't need to go to an ashram in India to find enlightenment. You might find it in the paint aisle at your local hardware store.
Or in the decision to finally change the furniture arrangement in your living room that you've been afraid to touch for 5 years.
It really challenges us to look at our own homes, our own temples.
What are we preserving out of fear? What ghost images are lurking in the hallway?
And what are we clinging to that we've clearly outgrown, like the Mr. Miller job?
It's a call to courage, the courage to change the physical environment, which in turn inevitably changes the self.
I have to ask you, if you were going to paint your cupboards to declare your independence today, what color would you choose?
I think I'd go with a bright, shocking yellow, just to really shake up the energy in the room. What about you?
I love that solar plexus energy. I think I'd go with a deep, cosmic purple. Really lean into the wizard vibes.
Very appropriate for you.
Listen, we have only scratched the absolute surface of what is in the Seth Material today. This was just session 353. There are literally hundreds of these.
It is a vast ocean of insight.
If this conversation sparked something in you, if you felt that little internal aha moment while we were talking, I strongly encourage you to not just take our word for it, go directly to the source.
Absolutely. Study the books yourself. You can find them at the New Awareness Network website and bookstore. That's sethcenter.com. The-early sessions.
Read the words. Let them sit with you. Maybe read them at night if you happen to wake up at 3 a.m.
Turn the insomnia into inspiration.
Exactly. And remember, this is a journey. Jane didn't fix everything in one single day. It was a process. One brushstroke at a time.
One load of laundry at a time.
Exactly. So here is my final thought for you to chew on as you go about your week. We talked heavily about the fox and the fleas. We talked about the laundry acting as a literal sponge for psychic stress.
Right.
So I want you to look around your house. If a pile of dirty laundry can hold on to energy you no longer need, what else is doing that right now? Is it that old chair you hate sitting in? Is it the gifts from an ex that are shoved in a cardboard box in the closet? What objects in your space are holding you back?
And do you have the courage to take them to a different laundromat?
Or just throw them out completely. Paint over them. Reclaim your temple.
Because it's your space. It's your reality.
Keep painting your reality, everyone. We will see you in the next deep dive.